woman herself. She is amazing, and you will see throughout this episode how amazing she is. And her name is Mandi Olivier. So, Mandy, thank you so much for making it to this podcast. Can you please just share a little bit about your journey from where you started up to where you are now? I know you still want to do a lot of things, but just share your journey with us, please.
Excellent. Good morning, or good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to everyone who is watching this podcast. Huge shout out and thanks to you for having me. I'm truly honored to be here and to be able to share my story and my journey with you. So my journey began over 50 years ago. I won't give you the exact date, but it was over 50 years ago. I was actually born in the UK and moved to South Africa when I was about 5. Both of my parents are workers, if I can put it that way. My dad was a boilermaker, my mum a hairdresser, which is why I always love my hair to be perfect. Okay,
nice. Yeah.
So there are some benefits to having a mum as a hairdresser. Yeah, I tell you. And my dad and mum both come from families who had nothing. And their wish was for us to give their children, at the time it was just my brother and myself, the best life that we could have. And I think we can all relate to that. Our parents all want the best for us. And they sacrificed a lot. When I was about 7, my dad got a job with De Beers, and we moved to a little town called Oraniumunt, which is now actually at the mouth of the Orange River, and it borders Namibia. So it was Southwest Africa, became Namibia while we were there. My dad worked as a boilermaker there until he retired when he was 60. When I was about 13, my little sister came along, so big age gap.
Yeah, wow.
Big age
Yeah,
gap.
huge.
Yeah. And I was shipped off to boarding school, and that was quite a turning point in my life because I was forced into independence quite early on in life, and I think a lot of the viewers probably could relate to that.
Yeah.
And in those days, our boarding house did not have a washing machine. So I distinctly remember having to, and this was in Cape Town, so rainy, cold winters, scrubbing with against the silver basins with my sunlight soap, getting my washing clean, having to hang it up on the line.
Yeah, that was years ago.
Very old-fashioned. Yeah. I used to phone my mum and dad from a ticky box, if anyone knows what a ticky box. If you don't, look it up.
Okay.
You know where you fed money in? And then my mum would phone me back and then we'd speak on the phone. So,
Yeah, so we never had that growing up. Yeah?
No, exactly. So once a week, I would phone my mum and dad, and I was a termly boarder, so I only went home in the holidays.
Okay.
So it was a difficult time for me. I felt alone. I felt very sad. I missed my parents terribly. Obviously, my sister had just been born, and I missed out on all of that. But one looks back on these experiences in your life, and you realize how much value they've actually added.
Yeah.
So I finished off my.
So I just wanted to find out about your sister, because you say there's a huge gap between you guys, and also when she was born, you were shipped off to boarding school.
I was shipped off the very next day.
So how's your relationship? Are you able to relate now?
Absolutely. When my sister was little, we all treated her as the baby, and I would push her around in the pram around town.
Oh, nice.
Living in a small diamond mining town is quite a unique experience because there's no need to worry about security. You need a permit to cross the bridge to get into the town.
Oh,
so there wasn't really much crime. And as kids, we could walk around, ride our bicycles, walk to the shop.
That's so cool.
We really had a great time growing up, and I used to cart my sister around in the pram with me everywhere I went. It was difficult. I'm not going to lie. I did feel rejected by my parents. But my relationship with my sister now is we like this.
Oh, okay? Wow.
So, my mom made sure that, when we were, growing up, that family was everything.
Oh, nice.
So, actually quite close to my sister, actually. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, great. And I believe, maybe the age, you were able to bridge that gap a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I can imagine if I have a sister who is like 6 years older than me, but you can tell that there's a bit of, we don't relate, and our interests are so different as well. So is that different for you?
I think my relationship with my sister is it's probably more like mother to child than sister to sister. Because I am always the one going, Megan, have you done this? Megan, where's your passport? Megan, where's this? But it's been really great because even though she's a lot younger than me, I had kids later and she had kids younger. So the thing that bonds us, I guess, is our kids.
Oh, nice.
I have 2 boys and she has 2 girls. So, and I was desperate for a girl when I was having children. Yeah. And so those are my 2 girls.
Okay.
And they absolutely love me and I absolutely love them. So that's been a great thing to bond over. Oh, Lucy's crying and I don't know what to do. Just calm down, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
It'll all be fine. Don't worry, Megan, she's going to be perfect. And my niece is flying now. She's an athlete. And you worry so much about little things. So being able to be there for her and reassure her that everything's going to be fine. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Yeah. That's beautiful. It's like having a mentor. In a sense. Yeah. So that's beautiful. Yeah. So let's continue on your journey after boarding school.
On my journey, yeah. So I was at boarding school in Cape Town, and the school I went to was Weinberg Girls. And I decided, don't ask me what got into my head, but I decided that I was not going to UCT because everyone else was going to UCT and I was going to be doing something different. And I suppose that's the story of my life. I don't like to be the same as everybody else. Yeah. I like to do things differently. So I decided that I was going to go to Grahamstown, now Makanda, and I was going to go to Rhodes University. So off I trundled, my mum and dad and I in the car, and we had driven through Grahamstown before we even realized that my dad had to turn around and come back. Then I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
Sure.
What have I done? Now, come to this little university town, and I really can say I thoroughly enjoyed my time at university. So,
really?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Loved. I was in res. I obviously studied my BCom accounting. Mm-hmm. I will tell you all that in the first year of my degree, I failed maths hopelessly. And it was the first thing I'd ever failed in my life. I'd kind of sailed through school.
Sure.
But the maths just went over my head, and I just my head wasn't in the right space to do it. And so I dropped maths, and that meant that I had to do an extra year on my degree.
Oh, okay.
But the following year, I picked up the maths and sailed through it. You just got to get your head right sometimes,
No, definitely. And also the adjustment, from Cape Town or a all-girls school, I can imagine that's another adjustment. Yes. And then now you're in this, university setup, and it's a smaller town, and, so I can just imagine that your head, had to adjust a bit. Yeah,
absolutely. But one doesn't waste one's time. And I realized that if I was going to be there for a 4th year, it would be useful for me to pick up some extra credits. So I ended up majoring in economics as well as the BCom subjects. And I believe that has given me a very different perspective on how the world works, which I'm really grateful for. So, yes, I spent an extra year in my degree, but I made the most of it, and I really loved doing those extra courses.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So that actually added up a buffer and advantage to you in your career.
Correct.
Because economics is so, it gives you a world perspective.
It does.
Unlike accounting, it's more streamlined and specific.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's great. So it's not so bad.
No,
we can't really encourage people to fail math, but if you happen to fail it, just make it worthwhile.
Exactly. See it as a positive. Do something with it.
Yeah.
Don't sit back and go, oh my gosh, I failed, the world has come to an end. It hasn't. There's a lot of hope for you out there. There are many things you can do. The world is your oyster. It's yours to choose from. So go out and choose something, do something with that.
Yeah. So with what you're saying, that the world is your oyster, I'm starting to see it now, like in my adult life.
Yes.
But if someone were to tell me when I was a bit younger to say, you can be whatever that you want, you can do whatever that you want, I don't think it really clicked. And I don't know why. Is it because our education system is, so streamlined that, all you do from when you are young up to university is school, and then now you start working, and it's a different ball game. How can you advise someone who's at that tender age, to live with that in mind?
Yeah. Look, I am very lucky that my parents, and my mom in particular, was very adamant that I could be anything I wanted to be. And I think that's the start. Now, I'll talk later on in my story about the concept of growth mindset. Now, I didn't know what it was then, but I mean, I thought I could do anything. Like I could be a doctor, I could be whatever it is I wanted to be. And I loved accounting. I did accounting at school, and that's why I chose accounting at university. But I mean, my advice to younger people is just really believe in yourself.
Yeah.
And don't have any limitations on what it is that you can do.
Yeah.
You need to really change your mind shift, your mindset around what it is that you are able to do, and believe in yourself, which is not easy. I think today there's so much pressure on people to get an A and to do this and to do that. The pressure's definitely there. My kids are now both finished school, so I've seen what the pressure's like at school. But I think if you can make these positive affirmations, and then you have positive affirmations and you put them on your wall, or you say them to yourselves daily, that is a good way, I think, to really change your mindset to I can do whatever it is that I want to do.
Yes, and I'm glad that you touched on that, to say you need to have your own positive affirmations and, sort of cultivate that spirit that I can do anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because you said your mom played a huge role in, telling you that you can be anything. But it's not everyone who has that privilege.
Exactly.
Some of our moms don't understand what we're doing, and they don't even know how to encourage us because they too were not encouraged.
Yeah.
So I think this message goes both ways. It goes to the parent who is watching this,
correct,
to say, be that anchor. Yeah, encourage your child. That it's free to dream. You can be anything. Use your imagination. But also as a child, if you find yourself in a family where you're not really getting the encouragement that you need, it's not the end of the world. You can also, cultivate it from the inside as well.
Exactly.
Wow, I like that.
I like that too. Yes. And of course, if you're watching this podcast, hopefully it will also inspire you, the watcher of this, to actually change your mindset and come up with those positive affirmations, and then just go for it.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
What were the most powerful affirmations that you had for yourself?
So, and this kind of goes back to the journey. I then, in my 5th year at Rhodes, I did my postgraduate diploma. It was called HDBAC in those days.
Yeah.
And I failed. Okay, I'm not going to lie. That was awful, because what do I do now? My parents can't afford to send me back to university. I'd already been there for 5 years. I had to start working. What would my new employers say? So it was quite a stressful time, and I made the decision. In those days, you didn't go back, full time. You just didn't do that. Was just they didn't accept you back. No, I'm being serious. It's very different these days. Okay. So I knew then that I had to start working. I had a training contract at Deloitte, and I had to study and work. And I'm going to share that I failed again. I failed my PGDA twice. And I really, you feel like you're at rock bottom at those stages. What am I doing wrong? What am I going to do with my life? when you're working, fitting in your studies is hard.
Yeah.
And I think it's even harder today because the volume is so much more than when I was studying.
Yeah.
But then in that third year of repeating PGDA, I realized that I needed to have these affirmations. And I actually, everyone would say, oh, dream of that car. It's all about money, but it's not all about money. It's really about being successful and happy. But I can pass, I will pass. I wrote them in big letters, I stuck them on my wall, and every time I looked up, I had this, I can, I will, I can, I will, pass. So that, I suppose, was for me the start of my affirmation journey, if you want.
I'm getting so excited as you're saying that, because that was exactly my strategy as well. Just pasting. I had a nice poem called I'm an Original, and that really helped me to be comfortable in my own skin, and just know that I'm unique and there's only one me in the whole world. And that made a huge difference, when you wake up and you just see that, it changes the whole experience of that day. So that's beautiful, and it's something that is so effective. I mean, I'm testifying that it works, so I'm just encouraging someone who is watching and also who is at rock bottom to say, this is a technique that you can simply start with now. And now, Mandi, it's so difficult for me to digest the fact that you failed PGDA, because since I've known you, I've known you as a CA, right? So we sort of like think, no, these people were born CAs to a certain extent, and you never imagine that you have failed. Because I also failed my PGDA the first time, and I had to repeat. And the same strategy that you say you used worked for me as well. And I mean, you sailed through high school. And then boom, you get to a point where you fail PGDA. And I think this is really, just showing that failure is not fatal. You can just get up and become great even after you fail.
I must say, at that time, I did get a lot of support from the firm that I was at Deloitte.
At Deloitte, okay.
They had, a lot of support for people who were studying. And I really do appreciate the support that I got from Deloitte, my colleagues at the time. And it was at that point that I really became interested in education. How do you learn? And how can I share that story with other people? Because for me, and this comes from that economics background, my biggest concern was the level of unemployment in the country. And of course, I was at university in the 80s, so we did have quite a few, toying even in those days, burning of tires. And I was very pro, in terms of making sure that, everybody had access to education, that we were only going to solve the challenges we have in this country of unemployment by actually educating people so that they can get jobs. So that's always been in my mind. But when I had been on the failure side of it and had been supported, I felt that I needed to give back.
Wow.
So that's where my love, if you want, of learning and development and education really started. And I managed to convince Deloitte that I could have a split portfolio and I could work partly in learning and development and partly do audits. So once I finished my training contract, I stayed on at the firm and I worked in learning and development. And I think after about 3 years, I then moved full-time into learning and development, into a role that didn't actually exist at the time.
So you were the trailblazer.
I wouldn't call it that. What I loved about that was it was my own job to do with what I wanted. So I could have sat back and waited for someone to tell me what to do. Or I could have gone, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, and let me see how far I can push the boundaries. And again, I was very supported by the head of audit at the time, Trevor Brown. And I mean, he just gave me that freedom to kind of make the job what I wanted to, and I think those are the best situations to be in, because you can really see how far you can go. But I think any job that you're in, be you in a finance role, be you in an academic role, what you make of it and what you put into it is what you're going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah, and also what I'm getting from that is that it's important to, have the freedom to be creative. Because when you give someone a role and they need to play around this little box, it sort of like limits their thinking. So you got the freedom to shape that learning and development role to whatever that you wanted to see. That's beautiful. Wow. And I mean, we can testify of the impact that you've made starting from Deloitte and where you are now, and I can see your passion coming through even in your current role. So that's beautiful. I think that's phenomenal, and we don't celebrate it enough. So I want to put it on record that thank you so much, and we're so proud of you for doing this, and I believe that you've impacted so many lives. Some of the people you might not even get to meet personally or physically, but really you have ignited so many light bulbs out there.
Thank you.
So your story of failure really became a turning point.
Absolutely. And I think it's important for others to acknowledge that failure stands for first attempt in learning. And if you don't fail, how will you ever learn? So it actually, if you switch it, and again, talk about that growth mindset. If you switch from I'm limited, I can't do this, I can't do that, to I can do these things, and you change that, then it actually just starts to happen.
It starts rolling, and then it catches momentum, and you're like, oh, okay, we are really moving. Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. So we spoke about your role at Deloitte.
Yes.
And then after that, what happened?
So I was comfortable at Deloitte. I had been through the partner assessment center, and I hadn't been successful, which was another sort of turning point in my life. Because
can you just unpack a bit about that?
Partner assessment and any firm is no easy feat. They test you from a technical point of view and a psychological point of view. And when I received the feedback that I wasn't ready yet, because they don't ever say no, they just say not ready yet. I was quite shocked. Again, I'd been sailing through, everything had worked out after my failure of the PGDA, passed board first time, it was all hunky-dory, loving life, got married, all of that. And it really, at that time felt like it broke me. But again, this is where they'd given me this new role, and I could do with it what I want. And I think the important thing to anyone out there who has experienced a really difficult, traumatic event, the message is you have to pick yourself up and keep going. So I really do believe that I demonstrated my resilience through that process. It wasn't easy, but if you don't go through those difficult times, then you're not going to learn and grow. So that was, I think really important for me to overcome that and realize, actually, you know what? I'm good at what I do. I can do the job that they've given me, and I can actually have a bit of freedom here to do quite a bit of things that I would like to try.
So when you say it broke you, how bad was it?
It was bad. It was bad. I mean, I cried. I, didn't want to get up in the morning. And again, my advice is, if you ever feel like that, don't hesitate to ask for help.
Okay.
I think that's the one thing. We all think we can do it all by ourselves, but that's not true. Ask for help. And I think at the time, I did go for some. For some counseling, and got some external support. But as time passes, and if you're strong in your mind, again, that growth mindset, you can do it. You can change the outcome of your path, to where you're going. And it's not, you might be very clear in your mind, I want to do this, then I want to do that, then that, then that. And then over here, something terrible goes wrong, and then you think, oh my God, I'm doomed for life. Now I'm never going to get there. But actually, I really do believe things they happen for a reason. And so, again, there was a reason for that happening, and it was for me to immerse myself even more in the learning and development space. So it was a redirection. It was a redirect. Absolutely.
Okay, so I just want to because I can imagine how many other people in their version of I'm broken or
Yeah.
it's bad. And I know with ambitious kind of women, we feel like we're in control. I'm still in control.
Yeah.
But when was that, threshold? Where did you really realize that now I need help? What was that cut-off point?
I don't know that there is necessarily a point, but when you've gone on long enough feeling.
How long was it?
I actually can't remember.
Yeah.
I think I blanked a lot of that out.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't like a year. It was probably months, let's say.
Yeah, a month.
Possibly months.
Yeah, that's very long to be crying. Yeah.
Yeah. No, unfortunately, one of the things about me is I do cry easily. Like I can be watching a sad movie and I'll cry. You could be crying about something and I'll actually join in and cry with you. So that is one of my personality traits. Which, again, I've had to accept. Working in a man's world, if people see you cry, they think you're weak. And that is so not true. So that's the one thing I've had to fight in this very male-dominated. And remember when I studied many years ago, I think there were, only 5 or so girls in a class. So we were very few. And then you go to the work environment, and again, there were not that many women. Today, I think it is different. Our training numbers do reflect that. We have more female trainees than male trainees. But women have different challenges that they have to face. As the housekeeper, if I can put it that way. And I am lucky I have a very supportive husband. So I do think he also played a role, in that, making sure that I'm, I need to get up and keep going, and it's not the end of the world. There's something else out there for you. When you can start to believe in that and see that, you can pick yourself up and go on that other journey that was always intended for you.
Wow. Yeah. No, that's great. And I'd like to pick up that topic about having a supportive partner at a later stage.
Yeah.
So now what I'm thinking about as you are talking is, you said, crying in the corporate space, doesn't mean you are weak or whatever. But one of the advices that I got when I was still training was that never cry at work. And every time if I had the urge to cry, I quickly run to the bathroom and then cry there, and then come back and act normal again. So is it bad advice?
Look, I think that the world and the workplace has changed.
Okay.
And I really do believe that there's a lot more focus on mental wellness. Okay.
Currently,
and I think with that in mind, people are a little bit more open. I mean, I'm not saying go and cry every day at work, okay?
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's really built up and you need to release, do it. I mean, I sometimes have been in meetings where I'm still talking but I'm crying. And then I'm like, guys, don't worry, I'm okay. I'm absolutely okay. It's just, it's just water leaking from my eyes. And in actual fact, tears have got cortisol, so it's actually a stress release.
Okay.
And I think if we can accept that people are different and everybody reacts to stress in a different way, that if that does happen, and some people don't do it, that's great. I'm not, saying cry for the sake of crying, right? But I do think that the workplace is a little bit more accepting of that under. You can see when someone's under pressure.
Yeah.
And certainly, in the environment that I work in now, it's quite okay. And people now know me, I guess, for who I am. And I suppose it helps to have a number of years of experience behind me.
Yeah.
And you do worry when you're young and you're just starting out. What are people going to think of me?
Yes, exactly.
Like, what are these people going to think of me? I'm crying.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
So it did take me a while, many years of growing up and experience to learn that actually people must accept me for who I am.
Yeah.
And this is who I am. I don't cry as much these days. So it's almost like accepting that actually made it easier for me to
yes, then you're not suppressing, you're not fighting it.
Exactly.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about the gender issue in leadership. right? So as a woman, you have quite a number of years of experience. What have you found is the environment in the spaces where you've worked in terms of gender equality, and what are the challenges that you came across in your tenure in those spaces?
Yeah. Look, I think one must talk about gender and gender equality, and then also talk about women and their roles, not just as workers and leaders, but as mothers.
Yes.
You know, so I think that they are two separate things. I must say, and again, this is just my mind. Like, I've never ever in my mind gone, oh, that's a guy and he must be earning more than me. Never ever.
Okay.
Never ever. I don't know why. It's just one of those things that I'm like, well, I'm a woman, so what?
Yeah.
And I think and I distinctly remember in my comm law class, these boys making me cry, and I thought, oh my gosh, I can't. Who are they that they think that they can just make me feel small?
Yeah.
And I think from that day on, I built up like this, can I say, screw you?
Yeah,
I'm as good as
it's a safe environment.
I'm as good as you, and you know what? And I do think the world has changed a lot since then. Women are recognized as being valuable in the workplace. They bring diversity. They bring a different perspective, and I think that's absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
I think though there is still that glass ceiling if you want to talk about women in leadership positions.
Yes.
But I have learned, and I would say this is probably only fairly recently, that you don't need to have a title to be a leader. And I think if that is a message I could get people to share today, you are leadership in your circle of influence. And then you'll find that over time, that circle of influence grows and develops. So it doesn't matter that I'm not, have a title next to my name. And I try and encourage my staff to do the same thing. Now, you want to empower them to and again, I wasn't always like this. I've had to learn these things over time. Again, if you don't fail and hit your head against a brick wall and realize something's wrong, you won't be able to improve.
To reflect.
Exactly. So my advice is, we are all leaders within ourselves, right? And so we need to exercise that leadership in a responsible way, in the way that you engage with yourself, first and foremost, then with other people. And you don't have to be, on the board or whatever to make an influence.
Yes.
You can find other ways in which to do that. And that takes courage. People are not always willing to talk out, and of course one has to do it in a responsible way. I'm well known for saying what I think, and I do sometimes have to temper that. So if you can learn that from an earlier age, well, that would definitely be my advice. How you say it is actually more important than what you say. So you can be saying, actually, your policy doesn't work, but if you're saying it in an aggressive, negative way, then people are going to put that barrier up, and they're going to, and then they will label you.
Yes, definitely.
But if you say, if you can engage them on this, and share with them the implications, and even if they don't get it first time, you just keep on with your message. That is how you exercise leadership. So I don't believe you have to have a title or be in a position to demonstrate those leadership skills. I think leadership is knowing yourself and using that to influence the world around you for the better.
So it's more like recognizing what are your strengths and the things that you feel passionate about.
Absolutely.
And try to drive that in your little space, even if you don't have the signing powers to certain things.
You can still influence.
I like that. I like that, because it means that we could be doing actually a lot more without those positions, because if you're able to articulate whatever that you want to happen, and you communicate with the right people, then it can be done. So I like it. So in terms of gender equality, so you said that the guys or the boys
Yeah.
who are trying to intimidate you in the com law class,
Yeah.
what are the things that they would say or do that would make you feel small? Or so in corporate, what was the thing that was said to you that made you feel like, you know, these guys are treating me like I don't exist?
I can't remember.
You can't remember, so
it was so long ago, and that's the only incident that really sticks out in my mind.
Yeah.
It's as if the incident happened, and I mean, it wasn't just once off. I mean,
Yeah.
it was, you know, continuous throughout the year.
Yeah.
And then I built up, you know, strength, that inner strength to say, well, I'm not going to let this get me down.
Yeah.
And I must be honest, I think having that attitude has really protected me
Yeah.
from, you know, I've never experienced sexual harassment, you know, comments, you know, and I think also, you know, for me, you know, if people would make, you know, underhanded comments, if you know what you know what I'm saying, I can't think of any offhand, but my response was to ignore.
Okay.
Ignore. Just ignore it, because if you make an issue out of it, then they just, people are like that, you know, they're going to keep digging and keep oh, I can see this unsettles you, so they're going to keep on it. So I actually just ignore it. And I mean, I'm very lucky the environment I work in now doesn't have anything like that.
Like that, yeah.
So I mean, I am lucky, and I think I'm just a force of nature sometimes, you know, and I'm just like, and I wasn't always like this. I must emphasize this. When I started, you know, when I was at school, I was a little mouse. I was a library assistant. Okay.
Okay.
I was a little mouse. I wouldn't stand up in front of people and speak. You know, going for leadership positions was just not in my.
Wow.
It just was not in my DNA.
Yeah.
I think, you know, being at university helped a lot. I got involved in, you know, not just academic stuff, you know, and I think that was important. In those days we had RAG, Remember and Give.
Yes.
Okay, and we used to collect money and donate money, and, you know, I was the treasurer, and, you know, I was on house committee, I was this, I was that, you know. So, you know, that also gave me some confidence, I think. And then when I started at Deloitte, I remember in our first year, there's a sort of an annual 1-week conference for all first years. We bring everyone from the first year together to one place. And it's very practical on, you know, learning. You know, yes, you were taught some theory, but actually a lot of it was
in action.
In action, okay, which I now love, of course.
Yeah.
But the one thing we had to do is we all had to stand up and do a presentation. And I think I must have been, I was nauseous, I probably vomited, I don't know.
Yeah.
But they had said to us at the beginning of the week, you know, identify some of these areas where you are struggling, or where you have a challenge. Make it a goal. So make it a goal for yourself this week to stand up and talk in front of other people.
Okay.
And I mean, it was stressful, hey? I prepared, and then I got up and I did my thing. I probably stumbled over all my words. But the relief and sense of accomplishment at the end of it, I don't know, something just switched on in my brain.
Wow.
And I started to become a lot more comfortable talking in front of people. You know, in the beginning, of course, if it's not natural to you, and it annoys me that to some people it just comes naturally, okay?
Yeah.
And you're going to look at me and you're going to go, what is she talking about?
Yes.
I mean, dead serious. You will not actually believe this. I was terrified to stand up in front of people.
Wow.
And, you know, you just prep, learn. And I won't sound the best presenter in the world, but someone can come to me now and say, Mandy, I need you to stand up and do this without any preparation, and I can generally do it without feeling sick in my stomach, right? Okay, as you do in the beginning. Yeah. So you learn, and the more you practice, the more you do it, the easier it becomes, you know. And so, yes, that's why, and I now am what I am today. I'm very loud, and I'm very,
You talk quite a bit.
I talk quite a lot, yeah. I promise you, if you knew me in high school, you would say these are two different people. Yeah.
It reminds me of myself, but that's a story for another day. Yeah. So that's really beautiful. And would you say being outspoken helped you in a male-dominated, you know, space, professional environment?
Look, I wasn't always outspoken.
Yeah.
But I do think you you do need to speak up.
You do need to speak
up. And they're lessons I've learned later on in life that I wish I'd learned earlier. Okay. But I mean, it is what it is, right?
Yeah.
And, at least I've learned them now.
Yeah.
And I think it's just as I've gotten older that I have felt the need to be more explicit in what I say and more direct, if you want. And of course, I do try and couch it in a nice way.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I've had my moments where, things just come out of my mouth.
It happens. It
happens. We're all human.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, if you do something wrong, don't be hard on yourself. We are all human and we all make mistakes. So if you're hard on yourself, that's when you start to, feel guilty and, it spirals downwards into this, I'm not good enough, and that's when you start to then come across even worse, if I can put it that way. So it's really important not to be hard on yourself. Be kind to yourself. Say kind words. Forgive yourself for making a mistake. And say, well, I'm not going to do it next time. And you learn from that and you move forward, right? Yeah.
Wow, that's great. So I'd just like us to unpack, the fact that choosing a partner, all right, the impact that it has on your holistic being, the achievements that you're gonna have, the quality of life, and everything else. How has that experience been for you? In your life?
Yeah, I must say, I think I have been very lucky. I met my husband when I moved to Johannesburg. He was moving here at the same time, and long story short, we met and in the same digs, and 3 years later we got married.
Oh wow!
I was lucky. I got the right guy. He was always very supportive of me having a career. I think that's important.
Yeah, that's big.
And we just had so many of the same values, I guess, and the same ideals and goals, that we wanted to achieve. So my husband has always stood by me, but I suppose the shoe also goes on the other foot.
Yes.
And about 10 or 11 years ago, 20 years ago, my husband found out he had polycystic kidneys. Which is a hereditary disease, and what it is it cysts form around your kidneys, and your kidney function decreases over time, and eventually you either have to have a kidney transplant or be on dialysis. And when my husband found that out 20 years ago, I'd already had one kid, and so there was the whole thing about, do we have another child because you can pass this on, and anyway, I don't think I really quite understood how serious it was at the time, but it took about 10 years for my husband's health to completely deteriorate. So I guess, you could say I was also there supporting him.
Yes.
And then he had a kidney transplant, and he had to be at home for 3 months with a mask, couldn't go out anywhere. So this is before COVID. So we were very well prepared.
Oh, wow. So you knew the experience.
We had hand sanitizer, we had masks, we had everything.
Oh, so you were
well experienced, yeah. So, I think it works both ways, and I think that's the important thing. You can't take.
Yeah.
Any relationship is about give and take.
Yes.
And every relationship has its ups and downs, this, whatever, and then I'm going to get divorced, after not even 1 year, and so I think choose carefully, I know maybe this might not go down too well, but I did live with my husband before we got married.
Okay.
And I think that for me, I know it's, maybe, from a religious perspective, it's not ideal, but you these things get to know your partner.
Yeah.
Because, seeing them on a date, they're not the same as, why haven't you washed the dishes? Or, you never know. If you folded the toilet paper the right way. You read all these stories. I've had none of that.
Oh, wow.
No. You've got to just, and then, it's also, as I said, it's about give and take.
Yes.
So your ideal and your standard might be like this. His might be slightly different. Where do you end up? Somewhere in the middle. That's the best answer for me.
Okay.
So, he's always been there to help. I have 2 boys. They're 19 and 22. And even as they were, growing up, he's always been a great role model for them, and also been there. Like, I'm the one who likes to, I must drop them off at school, I must fetch them from school, I must do this, I must do that. But when you are working and you've got a big job, that's not always possible.
Yeah.
And so having my husband say, okay, well, I can do today, and I'll say, I'll do tomorrow, or whatever the case is. And communication. I think that's the biggest thing. We do still argue sometimes. No, not sometimes, probably all the time. And it's always about communication. But you said this. No, actually, I said that, but I meant that, So, be clear in your words.
It's normal.
It's absolutely normal. And I think, the thing for me is always just being willing to forgive and accept. And if you can do that, we've been married 29 years now.
Wow, Mandi, that's beautiful.
And I'm eternally grateful whenever I, he's the first person I think of. He might say something otherwise, because he always teases me about. I'm always getting you coffee,
Yeah.
But it does work both ways. Wow. And I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, this is big for me because, and I think for a lot of people who will be watching this, because we are in an era where there seems to be like a trade-off between having a healthy and successful marriage, and having a successful career. So it seems to me that women need to choose one.
No.
So I'm so happy to hear that you've been in it 29 years, and I think you have so many lessons that we can use. We need a lot of techniques in order to sustain both sides, and as you said, you have a big job, right? So I just want to understand, if you can remember the state of your mind when you were going through all this with your husband not being able to work, and she's at home 3 months, but on the other hand, you have, responsibilities at work. How did you find your way through that? Did you have like a support system? Just take us through that experience.
Yeah, I think my kids were still relatively young at that stage. So I think the most important thing is a support system. And for me, it's always been friends, because my parents, having lived in Namibia, when they retired, they moved to Cape Town.
Okay.
So they weren't even in my space
anyway,
here. So I'm in Joburg, they're in Cape Town. So they couldn't really support as much as they would have liked to. Okay. So I definitely relied on friends, friends who are still great friends today.
Wow.
And I think having that circle of people, your tribe.
Yes.
But I did get a lot of support from work as well.
Okay.
And I think remember that not just when you're an employee, but when you're the boss, or supervising other people. Remember that everybody's life is different, and I really believe that if you are kind and caring to someone when they're going through something really difficult, then their loyalty towards you is just going to grow.
Yeah.
And you're actually going to get better work out of them going forward.
Yes.
So I received that. Was very beautiful. Lucky. Received a lot of support. And flexibility.
Is there an individual that you'd like to mention?
Yes. I mean, I left Deloitte unwillingly, just by the way.
Okay.
I was comfortable there. And it was all due to Chantal Mulder. She approached me and she said, please come and work at SAICA. And I said, no. The first time I said to her, no. Like, I like Deloitte.
Okay
I'm very happy here, you know. And then she approached me the second time when I just had my second child. Yeah. And I said, look, okay, I'll think about it. But I've got to work back my maternity leave. She said, doesn't matter, I'll wait for you.
Oh.
So and she did.
Oh, wow.
And so I worked back my maternity leave, and then I left and came to work at SAICA. And, I think it does help having, I don't want to say it helps having a woman boss, because, but she had been a mom herself. I think Veryl at the time was grade 10 or 11.
Yeah.
And so she understood what being a mother is. And that actually your children grow up far quicker than you can actually Like you blink your eyes and they're 19 and 22.
Yeah.
You know, and so how really important it is to make time when they are younger.
Yes.
Okay, you don't have to stop working.
Yeah.
You know, and I mean, that's really what you're asking about is, you know, how was that? You know, and I think in the beginning, as a working mom, you do feel guilty. I should be at home doing this. I should be, you know. I think the world is much more flexible now.
Now,
okay,
yeah.
with COVID and, you know, working from home and stuff like that. And my advice to any new mom is don't ever feel guilty. Okay?
Okay.
Give what you can and give your best always to your work, and give what you can and what your best to your family. Okay? And they can coexist. Absolutely, they can coexist. It's a personal choice, though.
Yeah.
You know, some people will say, I'm going to rather do one over the other, and that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay as well.
I think, you know, it's you know, how does society judge us? And we feel like everyone's looking at us, like we're in a fishbowl, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, look, she's working. And the worst is when you go to take your kids to school, and then there's the stay-at-home moms, and then the working moms, you know, and the stay-at-home moms are going, you know, like this.
Yeah.
Working mom. But you know what? Each to their own, and you've got to choose for yourself and make it work for yourself.
Yes.
And whatever you choose, just don't feel guilty, you know?
Yeah.
Just know you are doing the best all the time. And I can look back now and say, I was there for my kids' most important things. You know, having flexibility, I think is important. But because I was given that flexibility, I worked even harder. You know, that, and I really do believe that. If you give people that opportunity, you know, and you make it clear that the deliverables are obviously the important thing, not the hours that you put in, and you can work and trust someone to do that. Those people will always go the extra mile. And that's how you build a good working relationship.
Wow, and I think that's really beautiful, and it can liberate a lot of women in leadership, because and I like what Chantal Mulder did for you, you know, because I mean, this will go down as something that is, you know, you won't forget that experience, to say there's someone who supported me.
Correct.
I didn't have to let go of my career because life was happening to me, and life is always happening to all of us at all times. And I think for women in leadership who are watching this, I think they need to know that it's okay to be human. It's okay to understand that, you know, whoever is reporting under you is going through a phase, and give them a level of grace and support. You know, obviously they need to be responsible on their part, but you know, when you are kind to people, what I've found is they become, I don't want to use the word loyal, but they take up the responsibility. They feel they own up to whatever that they need to do, because they know that you're moving mountains for them. So we hear a lot of stories about bad women bosses and, you know, all that. And with this podcast, you know, we just want to raise this awareness that it's okay to be a nice woman and be sensitive to women issues as well. You know, when you know the responsibility that comes with being a parent and mother, you know, be gracious to the mothers that are working with you. You know, so that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. I'm happy that we have one woman who's really, you know, and I think you are also, because you were given that grace, you're also extending it. I've seen you in action. You're extending it to others, you know, and you know, as you're doing it, then you're just spreading this positivity around you. And that's so beautiful to watch. So we need more Mandis,
Thank you.
you know, so that we can make these working environments better. You know, so I like what you said about, you know, being involved in your kids' life. Activities. How deep does that go, and how are you able to balance that?
Look, you know, one of the things they say is, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. I don't know if you've heard that expression. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I think sometimes it's to my detriment. I always wanted to be involved in everything. Okay. So from the time that my kids started school, I got involved as a class parent. You know, running communication between the class and the teacher, and you know, giving the teachers, you know, birthday gifts, and you know, setting up little get-togethers for the class parents, And then I got involved through a friend of mine in the school parent-teacher association. And I think that probably was the second year my oldest child was at school. And I only stopped getting involved when my last child left matric last year.
Wow.
So I always believed, and I saw that as this is my opportunity to give back.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, my kids did go to a privileged school and so on, but I still felt I could make a difference. And I think, you need to look for those opportunities. And what it did is it obviously allowed me to spend a little bit more time, if you want, with my kids.
Yes.
They might say otherwise, because I would be organizing stuff, running around, and they'd be going, "Where's mom?"
Yeah.
But I definitely made an effort to get involved. So I knew what was going on at school. I, through that period, was the chairman, the treasurer, the everything you want on the parent association. I spent a lot of time engaging with the senior people at the school, conveying, messaging and stuff like that. And I felt there, was where I could make a difference.
Yeah.
But my kids, I also made sure that, I couldn't go to every swimming gala, right? That's just unrealistic.
Yeah.
But if I could get off work early, and, for me, if I miss work 2 hours, then I put back 4 hours, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
For me, it was important, and I always delivered, But I would go to the swimming gala, to the marimba festival, to the this, I was always there. Nice. As much as I could be.
Yeah.
Was it every single event? No. Does it matter? No.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. Don't feel guilty if you can't do it all.
Yes.
You need to apply some judgment as to, okay, today this is more important than that. And there are going to be times when you feel disappointed. Yeah. I missed my son's very last inter-school gala. But it was okay, especially now with technology. Yeah. I had friends videoing for me and sending me videos. Nice. I was overseas on a conference. So there are ways you can still remain in touch and still be there, you don't have to feel guilty. Definitely not.
Yeah, I like it. So I think getting involved in, your children's lives, I think you do, it makes 90% of impact. Because then you know what they're going through at any given point in time. They never feel like you're choosing work over them, because they can see that you're doing your best to be there. So in a nutshell, we're saying you can be a good mom and
a good worker
at the same time. It doesn't need to be a trade-off.
It definitely doesn't need to be a trade-off. Yeah.
All right. So the last one on your kids. What is the biggest thing that they taught you? As a parent, we assume that parents know everything, okay, which they don't. But what was the biggest lesson that you learned from your kids?
Sure. I think there's many, your kids, you are not there to teach your kids. Your kids are also there to teach you.
Yeah.
And the one thing I learned early on is that your kids are a gift. Okay. They're not, you don't own them.
Oh, okay.
And if you treat them as a gift, then you get a gift in return, right? Okay. So being present, very, very important. I'm just trying to think, what is the biggest lesson? Look, it always absolutely amazes me, because I am a bit of a jump out of the box, get excited about things. Yeah. That my kids can actually stand back. Yeah. And actually be calm and say, and rationalize things. And I listen to the way they rationalize things, and I think, my goodness, where did that come from? Yeah.
Who taught you that?
I can be a bit reactive at times, and they're always, I've never seen, my older one, my younger one is a little bit like me, but, he will always rationalize and so logical. And you think, wow, for such a young person to be so amazingly logical and think through things like that without because reacting is not good. Let's face it. And I know I do it, and it's one of the things I continue to work on. But he really is just amazing. And I think just to see them grow up and become their own people and think, actually, wow, I had a part in that.
Yeah.
You know? Obviously, they have many other influences, but I had a part in that. That's part of me.
Wow.
It makes you feel like you've really achieved something. And I think that your biggest achievement in life is always your kids and how they turn out, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. Sure. So the way you're describing your kids, I can just imagine that they're the most amazing children in the world, So it definitely just testifies that you did a great job, and to shape them up to be the logical thinkers that you are describing them to be. And well done on that.
Thank you.
All right. Yeah. So now back to your relationship. Now you said your last born is now in varsity.
Yeah.
And now it's back to you and your husband.
Yeah.
How has that adjustment been like?
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was terrified. I mean, I think the last day that my son was actually at school was when they got their matric results and they had a little celebration. I think I cried like for a whole hour. I'm sure people were looking at me as if I was crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I going to do with myself? I'm going to have no school to get involved in. My son's going off. What am I going to do? And, I did realize at that point that this was an opportunity for me to reconnect with my husband.
Yeah.
I think it's very easy when you are so busy, focusing on the kids, focusing on the job. The person who does get neglected the most probably is the husband. Okay, I'm not gonna lie. That's why I'm saying I'm really grateful to my husband for the support that he's given. But now it's our time, and it's really been great this year to be able to just go out to dinner, him and I, and sit down and have a conversation,
Wow.
And one of the best memories of this year for me was we were driving to a wedding in Durban, and I was reading a book about, strengths, people's strengths.
Yeah.
And I was like, let's do a quiz.
Yeah.
I had ticked off all of the ones I was.
Yeah.
And so then I read all the words to him, and he had to say whether that described me or not.
Yeah.
And it was such a fascinating exercise because you tend not to go that deep with your partner when you're so busy worrying about the kids' feed, bath time, is their homework done, all of that.
Yeah.
And so now to be able to breathe and to kind of reconnect has been great.
Wow.
Absolutely great. And I now, we have a mission, if you want, like, we will now, we want to go and experience life, the two of us, going away to new places, learning new things, meeting new people, and just experiencing life. Is the time is all now.
Yeah.
But let me tell you that even though your children might be 19 and 22, they are still your children. You're still going to worry about them. I think that stays with you for life, but it is definitely different. Once they leave home or they go to university, they are their own people, and you've got to, and that's the other thing. You can't baby them all along. They've got to go out and do the stuff themselves. Wow. And you've got to let go. My youngest went off to Stellenbosch, and I don't think he'd ever made his bed in his life. I'm sorry if that horrifies anybody. And I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, as I like to do. Yeah. But for me, the most amazing thing this year, and I'm so proud of him, is that he does his own washing, cleans his own room, buys his own shopping, food, etc., etc. And he's coped and he's passed all his subjects, and he's very independent. And seeing that, because I've given him that freedom. Go and succeed. Make it what you want. I'm still there. But so that's
beautiful.
Your children will always be with you, but I think once they get to that age, this is an ideal time to have you. I think you start to have a very different relationship with your partner once your kids are out of your life to some extent.
So obviously things don't go back to what you like before, but it's just a mature, more seasoned way of relationship.
Exactly.
Exactly. Oh, that's beautiful.
Exactly.
So I just want to ask you one other question before we close. I'm going to ask you another one, but what is your morning routine? Do you have one?
Okay, so I'm afraid I don't have a morning routine. I am one of those people who goes to bed as late as possible, and not working always. I like to read before I go to bed, and so I really have an evening routine rather than a morning routine. The longer I can lie in bed, and then I just hop out of bed and get ready, and then I'm at my desk, the better. Which is not always ideal, but one tries to prepare the day before. What are my meetings for the next day, etc., etc. So my evening routine, I have learned, and I've started yoga and meditation.
Okay.
I've just completed a mindfulness course.
Okay.
So what I like to do is finish the day, shut my computer down, and that will vary every night. I do like to watch a little bit of TV just to get my mind, otherwise I'll go to sleep thinking about work.
Okay.
But not too much TV, because that's also not good. And then I go to my room and I lie on my bed and I do a meditation. Okay. So I've discovered a lovely app. It's called Insight Timer. Okay. It's paid for stuff, but there's a lot of free stuff on there. And I just find every day there's something to suit my mood. You know, if I've had a difficult day and I'm angry, then it just comes up. And the meditations on there are anything from 1 minute to 20 minutes to, I suppose, longer. They also have nice calming music. So I actually lie on my bed. I have a heavy mask, yoga eye bag it's called.
Oh yeah.
Put it on my eyes. It's really good. That weight on your, and then I lie and with my earphones in and I listen to a meditation. Okay. And I just kind of let go of the day. You know. Okay. And then I'll read a little bit and then go to sleep.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Yeah, so then in the morning you just start on a new slate. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Yeah.
And note, there's no beauty routine in
there. You don't have...
I am the worst when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think it's typical of a lot of CAs, or women in leadership, a lot of them don't really have a beauty routine.
Not at night.
Yeah. Definitely not at night. No. Yeah, but there's room to learn. We'll start. Yeah. Yeah. So, the last question, Mandi. What is the legacy that you'd like to leave? You know, when we say Mandi was once a leader in this, and that, what is that legacy that you'd like to leave?
The legacy I would like to leave is one of developing and empowering others. So if I can have made a difference in just one person's life, you know, and I think, you know, specifically for me, I've tried to support people who have failed in exams in particular, because, you know, people really struggle. It's, you know, becoming a CA is not easy, I'm not going to lie. Yeah. But once you get there, the reward is great, you know, and the flexibility is great. So, you know, stick to it, you know, and if I can encourage people to, you know, invest in themselves, empower themselves, and be the best version of themselves. Yeah. If I've done that, then I have achieved. Then I'm happy.
Yes. Yeah. So when you say empower, we always, you know, throw these words around. Yep. But in this podcast, I want, you know, to equip whoever is viewing it with techniques that they can use, you know, for instance, to empower themselves, to develop a growth mindset so that they can achieve as well. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What would be those techniques?
So I think, you know, first and foremost, I have learned a lot from, you know, going to, let's call it therapy or counseling or coaching. And in fact, one of my biggest learnings, and I've been to coaching, you know, on different occasions, at least 4 or 5 times, and I learn something different every time. So I think being able to speak to somebody else is always a good starting point. Okay. And if it's someone who is objective, then they're going to point out what you might not be able to see, your blind spots. Okay. So listening to other people and accepting what your blind spots are, I think, you know, that's kind of a first step. I think, you know, setting goals and, you know, working towards something specific is also really, really important and critical if you want to get there. If you don't, you know, you're going to kind of drift. You might get there eventually, but it may not be a direct path.
Yes.
And it might not be in the time frame that you wanted. So I
Yeah.
think, setting goals is really, really important. The third thing I would say is make sure you surround yourself with the right people.
Oh, yeah.
And don't be afraid if someone is being that negative being in your life, don't be afraid to cut them out. You know? I think, and that's a hard thing to do. Someone you might have known for really long, but they're actually just that negative Nancy, you know? Just slowly let go and, let them go.
Yeah.
And make sure you surround yourself with those people that are positive, that are able to, that support system we spoke about earlier.
Yes.
I think would be really important. And then my fourth thing would be read.
Yeah.
Read. I love books. I love books. I buy books by the dozen. A lot of them sit next to my bed and I don't always get to read them.
Yeah.
That would be like, what would I like to wish for is I wish I had more time to read.
To read, yeah.
But, learn from others. I think, another useful thing today for the younger generation is TED Talk. There's some amazing TED Talks out there that so you don't have to read, you could listen to a podcast like this.
Yeah.
I think there are so many ways in which you can empower yourself these days. And, I was recently at a yoga retreat, and there was a young lady there, and at the end we all have to sort of, say our bit about what we've learned, and it astounded me that someone so young could come up with something so profound. And she really just said it was amazing to watch you. The range of ages was quite big. Yeah. To look up to people like you and see that even though you've gone through difficult times, look at you. You've stood up again and you're still here. You're showing up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just realized that I think the younger generations have so much available to them that you're not in my age category, but that I didn't have available to me, right? That I wish I had then. So I would definitely read that, or watch TED Talks or anything similar to that. But something that's inspirational. And inspirational.
Yeah. Wow, that was wholesome, Mandi. I wish we had more time because I know we can talk for hours and hours, but hopefully there'll be a part 2. So thank you so much for being a guest on this episode. We really appreciate it, and hopefully the viewers would have learned so much because I'm also learning. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button on the YouTube so that you can also see more of these podcasts, and hit the notification bell so that you're notified every time when we upload some content. And I wish you everything of the best on your respective journeys, and may you see much more success.